the way I see it, like the social institutions that control human behavior, they're partially in and of themselves a reflection of human reason. Okay, they're developed in reflection of certain human characteristics. Like the state as an entity, for example, or you take any social institution, sure, it negates certain human characters and human end goals and like certain human states of reconciliation or whatever. Like at the same time, it was created by human beings and perpetuated by human beings, and it might reflect a sort of tribalistic intrinsic quality that can contrast with a more unified human being. But like there's contrast, there's different aspects to human nature. It's a very shady, complicated thing. And I think it's a very minimal thing. I don't think human nature is what dominates. I think that social engineering conditions human nature more so than human nature conditions social engineering. But I think that both, I think that at the same time, there is that human nature that exists that produces these external coercive entities. And I think that negating those social entities that are coercive and so forth, just shattering them to be truly free and to be truly liberated is simply destroying a reflection of one's most primitive self. I think that is what's reflected in the most destructive and problematic social institutions that exist.
Okay, so like I would say that even if it's something that's left over from a long time ago that is reflected within them, I would still say that it's not uh, intrinsic or natural per se. I would say that it's just like the product of the social interactions themselves more than the product of human beings themselves. Like just because like it's like a matter of form versus content. Like the form of the materialist unconscious that I just described is intrinsic, but what goes in and out of it, I think, is just completely conditional.
So this isn't actually. It's interesting that you brought up form versus content because this is one of those things Hegel tries to reconcile with. Like he essentially tries to eliminate the philosophical divide between form and content because the form itself is like a sort of an exterior manifestation of the substance itself. Like it is a representative itself. Like taking I might be diverting a little bit, but I'm not trying to. But like take the institution chattel slavery. Okay, like obviously primitive. We look at it as like disgusting and disgraceful, but I think that that dynamic is also representative of something that we internally suppressed in the sense that there is a feature of human nature that seeks to control and seeks to subordinate and seeks to not see others in ourselves, not identify ourselves with others because of our domination of self-interest or whatever. I think that with these antiquated social structures and institutions, form and content wise, there's a sort of unification because the form, the form essentially manifests the substance of the internal, content itself. Is that making sense, or is that like I don't know?
It makes sense. Yeah, it's just kind of like I'm super hesitant to just say that it's human nature and not say that it was just like a attribute that was inherited from a certain societal arrangement and then repeated over and over again.
Okay, so here's the thing, like I can understand like thinking that I think that social institutions are more of an amplifier of characters that are human. Like I think that they amplify the worst or the best aspects of us, and I think that they, for like they add more shades of gray or color to a more basic human nature that exists. But like I find it difficult to come to the conclusion that like human nature itself is a social product because like it seems as though in order for those social institutions to exist in the first place or have a point of genesis, there had to be, fragments of human, there had to be like some human innovation for it to come into fruition in the first place that was reflective of these intrinsic impulses or like desires or so forth that are just contained within ourselves as conscious beings.
I
Like
th- I,
that's
I think that those are like they come from material advancement and material conditions. And then like you said something like the institutions amplify certain attributes within us. I would just say that the attributes within us are inherited from them and aren't don't come from us. They just come from the society. And we inherit
okay.
it. We like internalize it.
Okay, so let's try to apply that framework, but like with the concept like freedom. Okay, like say you're thought experiment time. Like say you're in this brutal dictatorship. You're totally isolated from the rest of the world. There's no like philosophers like you have access to who can tell you that you know this is what freedom means. There's no Kant or whatever to tell you that you need to revolt. You're just there and you're constantly perpetually oppressed and repressed by the state apparatus that's controlling you and like subordinating you. Do you think that, you know, if this institution propagandizes itself as claiming to be, fruitful or claiming to be beneficial in the most, effective way possible while being brutal and very like what's the term? I don't know, but like brutal and like horrible, but at the same time, it's trying to manufacture this propaganda to condition you to believe in its necessity for perpetuation. Do you think that you don't think human beings would have this natural predilection to want to revolt, even if there's nothing in the social conditioning that would suggest its necessity?
No, I think most of them will begin to desire their own oppression.
Okay, so like the problem is there more like you to elaborate on that, or do you think that's
Well,
just
that's like one of the. It's funny because that's like one of the key um, ideas that comes out of anti-oedipus. For one thing, is the fact that like societal repression produces psychic repression in the individual mind, and like even in the unconscious, which and the thing about this is like I basically think that that explains that sort of dynamic of like people begin to desire their own oppression. It explains the reason why we still have this like atrocious capitalist mythical society, because most people are completely inculcated in its value system and ideology to the point where their very humanity is subjugated to it and then reinforces it.
okay. So like this is like I this is why I hate when Deleuzians call themselves post-Marxist because like I feel like I don't even know why they associate, I don't even know why they come to that conclusion because like it implies some degree of continuity or like like some like appeal to Marxian foundations, which I don't understand. But like look at like reflect like think of it within the context of the French Revolution. Okay, there wasn't the people who revolted were not like experts on these various classical German philosophy. Or to be fair, was classical German philosophy post French Revolution? I don't remember, but the point is they weren't like thinking of philosophers advocating for liberation. Like what's famous or what's shocking is that the roots of the French working class they revolted against the state apparatus, and this is one of the things that inspired Marx himself. It inspired Hegel, and it also really influenced the way Marx looked at things. But like Hegel saw how these French, one of the reasons why Hegel, understood the significance of freedom was that as an, human quality was that he saw how these French revolutionary masses, not by listening to the, crowning philosophers in their ivory towers, not by this appeal to some, abstract, just from a pure human, intrinsic desire, they revolted against the French aristocracy and the French monarchy. They instituted these fundamental changes, and these people were not reading manuals about how to govern themselves. They
Right.
started forming their, social councils and what forth, utilizing the resources, and it's just a shocking thing. Like, I don't know how that can be reconciled with this. I think that
I
the
think,
reason
well, if I tell you more, um, it can, because we also have the idea that there's always a potential for, like, desire has both potentials. It has the potential of reaction and the potential of revolution. So maybe we can reconcile both of our perspectives if I agree that there's always the potential for revolutionary investments of desire that people have.